Hey everybody, Fishman here. Welcome to another video. This is Fish from blog number 14. And as you can see, the population of Daphne here is doing very, very well. But believe it or not, I would like even more, but I am running into a little bit of a problem. They are currently eating the free-floating algae culture faster than I can grow it. I need to find a way of increasing the productivity in this tank. If you remember a couple weeks ago, this tank was so thick with algae you couldn't see anything in it. And now you can begin to see the underground filter there in the back. And if it continues this way, I am not going to even be able to maintain that population of Daphne, let alone more. So I need to do something in here, and seeing how it's already getting 24 hours of light, the first thing I thought I'd try is I took out the little acrylic container of soil and gravel, and I've just dumped in a whole pile of soil. This is going to coat the bottom, and once it's all hydrated, it'll float down, it'll all clear up, and then I'll be able to grow, hopefully, more algae. The other option I have is to take this tank, take it apart, and take all the stuff that's in it here, put it in the tank on the lower right, and then convert that to an algae tank, and then have both those tanks feed into the Daphne culture. So while that other culture of algae currently is getting its population back up, I'm going to feed the Daphne out of this tank here, which is doing really quite well for an algae growth, and that way hopefully it'll all come to some sort of equilibrium shortly. This little clip here I wanted to show you because these two little buggers are beginning to mature, and they're doing a lot of sparring. So they're being a little frisky, so I thought I'd show it to you. I'm going to have to put some caves in here, I think, give them some places to get away from each other. I suspect they're probably going to be both males, but you never know at this age. It could be almost anything. But I wanted to show it to you because it's nice to see when fish are that active. Now this is something here that I'm actually even happier about. These tanks here represent the last tanks that I need to plumb and hook up to the overflow system. And now it's all done. They're all hooked up. And that's actually great because even though these tanks aren't running yet, when I get around to setting them up, it's all set and ready to go. And that means I can get on to some more experimentation, which is what I really want to do. So what I'm going to do initially, the top 6 tanks, if you remember a couple weeks ago, I put together a number of underground filters. I'm going to throw them in there right off the bat and get them running and turning over and doing all the things they need to do. Because, well, with COVID and everything, I have an awful lot of plants in the fish room and more fish than some of the tanks should have in them. So I get to spread everything out. And then that should balance things out really quite nicely for chemistry and everything. And then, of course, with all that done, I can get on to some fish I want to breed and a whole pile of plant experiments. Well, I've covered a lot of these before, and I just want to get on to doing all that now. One thing I've noticed, though, the 12-inch deep underground filter is not actually performing as well as I thought it would. It's obviously way too early to tell, and it may just be the fact that there's a lot more dirt in the gravel I put in there, but it's not as clear as the one beside it, which I set up about 3 or 4 days later. Again, it's just possibly an anomaly, but also it could be the simple fact that if you make something and then you make even more of it, more is not always better. There's a couple of examples that are actually coming up later on in the video. Now I've got these up and running. I didn't bother cutting the stacks to their proper heights because most likely some of these are going to go down below, and then I have to rearrange them anyway, and of course I have to hook them up to high humidity planter filters and all that sort of stuff. So I just took offcuts and stuck them in there. Didn't even put caps on them or anything, and it's just, like I said, just to get the tanks going. And I'm going to get some plants in there, spread things out, and like I said, just get things up and running. So these tanks here now are all filled. I topped up the tanks like you can see here, and basically they're all set. I'm going to let them run for probably a couple of days at least before I go putting some fish in here. But I need to get snails, I need to get shrimp and copepods, all that stuff going in there, and get it all ready for ready for all the experiments I want to do. As you can see, this tank seems just a little bit more off to me. But it could, again, just be because with that much gravel, it just got a little bit more dirt than the others, or that particular batch of gravel was a little dirtier. Like I said, these things take time, and it will all come out in the wash. So I wanted to show you these guys here because they're doing really well, but also I need to prune them back. This one's probably the one that's needs the least pruning. It's doing really well, but it's not yet at the point where it's getting overcrowded because I built that one taller. But you can see this one here is really crowded, and then the one next door is even more so. So I'm going to probably pull these apart in the next couple of weeks, pull out a lot of the Java fern and pearl weed, and get them set for the new tanks on the other side. So that is where I'm going to get my plant sources from for those. And like I said, I like lots of plants in the aquariums. And I find if you have an overgrowth of plants up in here, it doesn't really interfere too much with the fish as much as if you have too many plants in the aquarium, which I find can cause problems. This with circulation and everything else, but like this, it's perfectly fine. And these two tanks here are so stable. These fish do well. I don't have any issues with them in any way, shape, or form. And as you can see, they have tons of babies. And believe it or not, there are actually quite a few babies in here too with their plecos. Sorry, not plecos, platies. But I had my hands over the aquarium, so they all ran and hid. Now this is the pleco breeding aquarium. And because I feed this tank so heavily, this is really massively overgrown. And it needs to be pruned back. And again, it's going to be used as a source of plants for the new setups. And that's actually kind of good timing that way for a change, which is kind of nice to see. So I'm going to get that all up and running in the next couple weeks, and I will show you. Now, if you remember, I said earlier, more isn't necessarily better. And this is a perfect example of this. About 3-4 weeks ago, I pulled it out and I showed you that, hey, I didn't think it was doing really that well, but I saw a bunch of new shoots on the plant on the left, and I said, well, I'll give it another little while. Well, I decided today was a good day to have a look at it and take it apart and see if it is actually doing better or worse than if I just stuck it in an aquarium. And as it turns out, I actually think it's not doing as good as it would if I just put it in an aquarium. I mean, it's growing lots of roots, and as you can see on the container here, lots of algae, but it is not doing as well as I'd hoped it would do. I remember when I first set these up, I had high hopes for them to grow plants really quickly. It's not. I mean, Anubias is a slow grower anyway, but this is not a good looking plant. It just isn't. Even if it were, not growing better or worse, but the leaves looked better, I'd be fine with it. But no, it's just not good enough. And the cryptocarine is, I've had it in an aquarium. It's an old pot, and I've pruned it back many times, and I've taken lots of cuttings off it for other pots, and it has done really well in pretty much every style of setup I've ever done. But in this one here, as you're going to see here shortly, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not dying. It's not having any issues with any of the leaves. Is actually looking better than the Nubius is, but it is not thriving, which is what the whole point of this was. I was hoping to be able to grow plants faster and better. And the high humidity planters, the ones I've already shown you, you can see they get teeming with plants in really short order. So I think, as I was saying earlier, this is just too much of a good thing. It's just too much water, and they're not doing very well. I'm going to leave that setup up there for the moment. I'm going to try a couple of other types of plants in there just to see if it just happens to be these two varieties. But these ones here, I am going to go back to the high humidities or just actually keep them in an aquarium. Those two varieties are good enough for it. So we're getting close to the end of the video here. And as always, please leave comments. Let me know what you think of everything. And if you feel like it, do leave a like or a subscribe. That would be much appreciated. I put the 2 plants up in here right now. They're just going to get in there to get the stuff going. And I mean, I had to put them somewhere, and the rest of my tanks are just way too crowded at the moment. And the last clip I'm going to show you is the other change I want to do, because it's a bit of a surprise as well. I always thought the bottom wheel would be the one that would give me the least amount of troubles, but it is actually the one that is giving me the most trouble. It's the one that actually seizes up. So it's going to have, has to come apart anyway. But the final results for this is the simple pad. The pad with no wheels on it, no nothing, is the one that turns the most reliably, and I rarely if ever have to do anything with it. It's the one underneath that causes me issues, which is interesting. I like getting interesting results like that, so that is definitely one. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next video, and bye for now.